Tonight, a story we brought you a few weeks ago on RFL with an update now. Teacher sex scandal in Chappaqua. The allegations outrageous, and so is the way the school system has handled it. Why are they blaming the student victims here? We will speak with those victims' attorney to find out. Then, legal questions for Donald Trump, including conflicts of interest with his overseas business, disclosures on financial and medical issues, and investigations into his foundation, as well as a suit seeking access to his divorce records. And later, should 9/11 families have been able to sue Saudi Arabia? And if they can, could that put Americans in legal jeopardy down the road? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Legal Night here on RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Sex and drug scandals between teachers and students are frighteningly common these days. But one case in the Tony Westchester hamlet of Chappaqua, home of the Clintons, feels even more lurid than most, including a totally tone-deaf reaction from the school as well as the school system. Now, it happened at Horace Greeley High School, a school with a reputation for academic excellence. In 2015, it was listed as the #1 best public high school in the entire United States by Best Colleges and number 17 smartest public high school in the U.S. by Business Insider. It also has a renowned theater program led until last year by this man, drama teacher Christopher Schroffnagel. Until that is, a set of lurid allegations cost him his job. Now, those allegations all came from former drama students of his, and they're revolting to read. Among them, that Schroffnagel engaged in a 5-year sexual relationship with a male student, that he had and coerced students into oral sex with him and other students, that he provided drugs and alcohol to students, got drunk and high with those students, and that he asked students to take and send him photos of their genitals, and much more. Schroffnagel and prosecutors had worked out a plea deal by which the former teacher would admit to 3 misdemeanor counts of endangering the welfare of a child and would receive probation and have to register as a sex offender, but there was no jail time attached to it. Now, many parents see that as a slap on the wrist given the serious nature of the allegations, and for the judge's matter, the judge has yet to accept that plea deal, but the students and parents, they're seeking justice through another route. Civil suits. They have filed in federal court against Schroffnagel and the Chappaqua Central School District. The district was offered the chance to take the case to arbitration, but the school declined. And they are now digging in to fight the suit in an incredibly tone-deaf manner in my eyes. How, you ask? Well, by suggesting that anything that happened to, again, the 14 and 15-year-old kids at the time, those same students and their now 42-year-old teacher, was in fact in part the student's fault. You heard me right. In a court filing, an attorney for the district, the school district, says any harm suffered by the students was, and I'm quoting directly, caused or contributed to by reason of the carelessness, recklessness, negligent and or assumption of the risk, both implied and expressed, of the plaintiffs. Again, a reminder here, the plaintiffs were at times 14 and 15-year-old students. And there's more. In a later filing, the district essentially threatened to out those children, to make the names of the teens' parents public, saying that the names, and again I'm quoting here directly, can't make this up, those names should be revealed to diminish the possibilities of injury, incompetence, perjury, and fraud, adding privacy is a limited right. The parents say it's an attempt to shut them up and shame them into silence to protect the image of the school as well as the district. And for more, I want to bring in our guest here, an attorney we introduced you on this program a few weeks back, David Engelshire. David is with the law office of William A. Galena and representing the families of the students in their federal lawsuit. Again, we're talking about 4 of them are your clients, and also with us regulars here, 2 of those members of the panel, Mark Furnish, adjunct professor at the Elizabeth Haub School of Law at Pace University. He's argued, as we say, with everyone, but also before the U.S. Supreme Court. Also, Doug Von Oyst, founding partner of Carson Von Oyst, focusing on corporate misconduct and spending way too much time on the left coast here trying cases. All right.
Show them how it's done.
Exactly. So, Dave, when we spoke about this, again, as somebody who kind of learned about the story as many people in the audience did, and then there was an expansive 18-page story that's now in the New York Magazine that paints more color around the story. and I want to confuse because there's the case that you're working on and separately a federal case. But nonetheless, I was shocked that there was an opportunity presented on more than one occasion to the school through arbitration to privately handle this matter. And either they didn't respond or they told you no dice. And instead, they then went and first, what we reported on this program with you, where they said it was the kids' fault, in effect. And now, since our conversation, they're saying, you know what, we may release the names of the parents here. And obviously, it doesn't take Inspector Clouseau to figure out, when you give the parents' name, who the kids are in question. Kids that were, by the actual person on trial here, by the drama teacher himself, there's an acknowledgement that these were minors. They couldn't have consented even if they wanted to. They were assaulted and they were victims. This gets stranger and stranger. In the last 3 weeks, it seems to have made a full turn to the bizarre, and now you add on top of it a federal lawsuit here. What's going on?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me back, but what a difference a couple of weeks makes, right? I mean, the last time I saw you, things got a little quiet, but then you have additional cases, you have the New York Magazine article, and how about those contentious board meetings where community members are calling for this board to resign? It's unbelievable how in a short period of time the temperature of the community has changed. And I'm listening to you do your introduction today, Richard, and it makes me shudder to hear this stuff again. And I'm used to it. I've heard this stuff before, but I'm hearing it again. Blaming the kids, saying we didn't know anything about it.
Well, let me stop you there for a second, because one of the things, and you alluded to this before, but obviously with a sensitive trial, but now some of this is public information given what we read. There's an allegation that in 2011, the board was made fully aware that there was improper sexual conduct between said teacher and one of the students. Do we know that was we hear about all these ancillary, well, it doesn't seem the teacher's right, or why is they keeping the kids too long, or some complaints that were made, but this was a formal complaint, it seems. Do you know, was that complaint actually made, and what did the school do or didn't do when they heard it 5 years ago?
Well, I'm going to believe a mother and I'm going to believe a child who say under oath, because then you verify a document, that's what you're saying, that the complaint was made. So I'm going to believe them. Obviously, I didn't hear it, but I'm going to believe them. Did the school do something? Well, we know they didn't, because it continued. My kids were 2011, 12, 13, and 14. So if somebody went in 2011 and said, this teacher's a bad guy, and they did something about it, that teacher would have been gone. So I'm going to take those kids and those parents at their word. Right? They have really no reason to make this up.
And the school continued to give this teacher, in effect, access to the children for hours uncommon to any other teacher or professor, allowed to take the kids not just on trips, but on European trips without parental supervision and the rest. Now, there were two quotes that I wanted to get your reaction to, and one was from the principal and then the other from the town supervisor. And again, these are in email form here, so this wasn't second or third hand. Reportedly, the principal, and I'm sorry I don't have a graphic for you, but he says, when the probe was launched, he said, there is a very big effort to keep it under wraps as much as possible, he said. This is Chappaqua. Nothing goes wrong here. This is a nice town. We all pay God knows how much in taxes to go to the #1 high school in the country. If anything were to come out, oh God. School superintendent, also in the same time period, when asked about the case at a town forum, this is in front of other, obviously, parents and everyone else, he said, the schools are our biggest industry. Whether you have kids in the school or not, that's what maintains our property values. It would seem to me, when you have written statements, that the school's first concern at the moment wasn't figuring out exactly what happened, but to protect the school, in effect, and protect the reputation of the school.
Perverse, isn't it? I mean, they should have been thinking about these kids first. The first quote that I read was a mother who worked on the theater rep group, the Friends of Greeley Theater Group, saying, this is going to affect our ability to fundraise. And then you have the town supervisor saying, this is our biggest business. I haven't heard somebody say, boy, those kids, shame what happened to them. Let's try and help them. That you haven't heard. But you hear people come out and say, business, money, fundraising. That's the primary concern here. And then they get the PR firm to, sort of shield them. No one here has said, and you had mentioned it earlier about arbitration, and I'll say it again, my phone lines are open. These guys can call me. They never have.
I was curious about that, David. What's the mechanism by which this would be subject to arbitration?
It's very simple. They call me up and say, David, let's either arbitrate or mediate.
Right, but what's the contractual mechanism that would subject it to arbitration?
There is no contractual mechanism as you may be thinking of in, let's say, a union or even a credit card situation. Right. We don't have that. Okay. They can call me up and say, let's mediate.
Oh, mediation.
And and you can even arbitrate. But what I did say to them before this came out, before this got public, before I served a summons and complaint, I am willing, I'm authorized by my clients to go out and try and set up a confidential mediation, and no one ever called me back.
One question about the district, then I want to get into the kids and where this goes. In 2011, if it can be proven that a formal complaint was lodged with the school, did the school have a legal responsibility to go to the law authorities?
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. They are mandatory reporters. If you have an inkling that somebody in your school is abused either physically or sexually, you've got to go do something about it. So, yes.
Okay, and we know that didn't happen. Now, let's go down the line here because the judge still has not signed that plea deal. One of the questions I had in our prior conversation with David was, wait a minute. My kid's 14, 15 years old, and this teacher did what he did, acknowledges it happened. I don't want him, get probation. I want to have him see the inside of a cell. Now, I know the families, while they have nothing but antipathy for this teacher, and there's a lot of contributing reasons as to why it's a different, people think of, Horace Mann and some of the other schools that are at the center of this, and they go back to cases from the 70s. That's a private school. This is a public school. There's a 90-day statute. I don't want to go into all that. But the point is, the family seemed okay with it, but the judge still hasn't signed it. Is there a chance that this drama teacher might still see the inside of a jail? And I know he's suffering still from cancer reportedly. He's up for his third different procedure to it. Is it just stated this is strictly going to be civil, or could there still be some criminal exposure to him?
Well, let me just say one thing. My mothers are not happy with no jail. My mothers want to see jail. The parents and the kids involved as the criminal complainants, at least this is what the district attorney said and what the defense attorney said, they don't want to go through the criminal trial, and that's what the judge wants to hear for himself.
And also that he wouldn't have to be in a permanent sex registry, right?
That's not part of the deal, believe it or not, and I think the judge wants to make sure that and he has asked for information from the DA or the defense attorney about that, and I don't know if that has been provided, but I just want to make clear to you, my parents are not happy with this guy getting off.
Now, we also know that the kids at the center of this, the children, the 4 kids you're representing, and others too, I understand there's some that have PTSD. I understand there's one that contemplated suicide. Obviously, I don't want to violate any privacies, but still, how are the kids doing?
Well, as I said with the last time, they are damaged kids. And not only are they damaged, but the parents are damaged, the families are damaged, the siblings are damaged. But these are kids that probably for the rest of their lives will never be able to trust somebody. Will never be able to trust somebody where faith and honesty is the core of the relationship, whether it's a spouse or a good friend or a business colleague. These kids are bad. They are not okay.
And unfortunately for time, the last thing is, where does it go from here now, David?
Well, if I do not hear from the district from the district about trying to resolve this, I am persevering. I'm going forward. My parents want me to push forward, and that's what I intend to do. And I do want to say one thing to you. The case that you just read about in the federal court case, when I read the complaint, I'm thinking to myself, there's nothing new here. This is what my kids back in August said in their testimony and in their notices of claim. What makes me feel good is that you now have a 7th kid saying what my kids have been saying all along. And my kids came forward, Richard, without the luxury of having other cases behind them to sort of stand on the shoulders. These guys are coming forward, and it's great. But you know what? My kids were brave. My kids answered questions under cross-examination at hearings. My kids came forward. My kids risked being outed, if you'll excuse the expression. I give my kids a lot of credit, and they're very brave kids.
I'm still befuddled by the handling by the district here and the school. We're going to continue to follow this, and I wish you the best of luck. Dave,
Wish
thank
you
you
a
so
pleasure,
much.
and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, coming up next, a bunch of legal questions surrounding one Donald Trump, including conflicts of interest potentially on his foreign business deals, disclosure issues, questions about his foundation, and even possibly divorce records. A lot to unpack here. We'll get into that after this.